My name is Darla Dubois. I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I am a targeted individual. I became targeted in January of 2009 based on a phone call made by my friend's roommate and her girlfriend at the time. They called the VA police one morning as I was on my way to pick her up from work, and they went and pulled her off the floor and held her until I got there. They came out and interrogated me. They accused me of being high on drugs and having drugs in the car, which was a false claim. I know that I had been investigated, and that investigation was quickly squashed. However, weird things began to happen and are still happening today. Some of the facts, those phone calls were made, the false accusations were made. There was numerous break-ins while nobody was there, and attempted entries into my apartment while we were there. A lot of maintenance was done without prior notification by maintenance. There was a mysterious humming noise that appeared one day and continued in the apartment that I lived in. We had moved from one location to another, hoping that this would stop, because all of a sudden we had all new neighbors. And one of the first indications that anything serious was happening was I had a flashback of being held down on a metal table. I was coming to, assuming I was drugged. There was two men in the room and a female holding down my arm. She stated to me, "Calm down, Darla, you're only going to make things worse." I happened to, the woman in that video, or in the flashback, was the assistant apartment manager of the complex I lived in. Some of the things that I've experienced since becoming a target, I've been sexually assaulted repeatedly for almost 2 years. I audio recorded starting January or June 30th of 2010. I audio recorded for a month while I slept. The recorder only picked up sound when there was sound to be picked up. I started listening to them recordings July 19th. I was not prepared to hear what I heard. The first thing I heard was there was about 5 individuals searching for my recorder. I found the recorder, and I proceeded to hear myself being sexually assaulted, one guy right after another. These sexual assaults happened for 2 years. When I became aware of this, I could no longer stay in my apartment by myself. My roommate worked the overnight shift at the VA hospital. I proceeded to stay at my mother's house, and this followed me there. And there's indication that she may be being targeted as well. I've received numerous physical injuries that I could not possibly do myself, stayed by the doctor. I've had torn rotator cuffs. I have serious injuries to my neck and inside my skull. I'm recently being treated for injuries to my spinal cord, my spine, and huge air pockets in my head and air in my bones. My spine is very fragile due to the fact that I was being sexually assaulted, and during those assaults I was not being allowed to breathe from having objects put down my throat. A lot of my rights were violated. Along with being sexually assaulted, my cat was assaulted in front of me as a way to punish me for doing stuff to the computer, trying to get this to stop. Windows 7 had to be reinstalled on this brand new computer, and it was indicated that this was my punishment for erasing 3 years worth of information that was put on the computer. I was taken out of my home, and this was all picked up on the audio recordings. I was video recorded in November 30th, 2010, after coming out of a facility trying to reach out for help and for safety reasons. I was visited during the night. Videotapes were recorded of of the sexual assaults, and these video recordings were put on my phone. With the audio recordings, I did go to the police, and I was turned away due to lack of evidence. The officer did come to my apartment, questioned my roommate, looked around the apartment. We could not figure out how they were getting in. There were a lot of people involved. Night after night after night. Every time I recorded, it picked up something. I have, mysteriously, a video of my x-rayed legs appeared in my camera as I was transferring the pictures from the camera to the computer. There was 266 items when I began and 268 when I finished. And when I looked for the two new ones, one wasn't a short little clip of my x-rayed legs being carried. It has been made known, of course there's a slander campaign against me, and they've made it known to me that I'm being accused of prostitution, child molestation, filing a false claim with Social Security. All of them are untrue. I believe that I became a target truly based on those false accusations against me, but I have to be honest and say that 4 years ago, a couple weeks ago, my sister was murdered here in Minnesota, and 6 months after the murder, I was struggling to deal with this issue. It was horrific. She was beat to death, and I am an addict and an alcoholic, and I was sober for 2.5 years when this happened. Due to the pain and my inability to continue to reach out and ask for help, I did relapse in January 2009. I honestly believe this is a direct consequence to my relapse. However, after I became targeted, it was really, I struggled because I was being tortured. And one of those ways of being tortured was the sexual assaults, and it was so intense in the beginning, I couldn't deal. And I started reaching out for help. Nobody wanted to believe me. My family, it was, who wanted to believe a drug addict? It was easier for them to say it was in my head. I suffered an overdose. It was not an attempt at suicide. However, it was my way of getting out of the intensity of the emotions. My roommate was ripping me to shreds with, verbally, drunk one night, and instead of punching the wall or whatever, I swallowed a bunch of pills. I proceeded to try to throw them pills up, and I couldn't. And the next thing I know, I laid down on my bed, and that's the last thing I remember. I did not die, just to experience some more horrific things, and I figured there had to be a reason I didn't die. I suffered in silence for 2 years, and I made a decision one day with God's help to change my perspective on this whole ordeal of becoming targeted. Because of suffering in silence for 2 years, I retreated inward, and when I came out, it was considered for me a dark night of the soul. I came out the end of that into the light to discover the divine within. I really got really close with God. He was the only one there for me. He did not leave my side through this whole ordeal. In reaching out for help, I did enter into treatment facilities in October of 2010, and I've struggled to maintain my sobriety. I've had periods of abstinence, but trying to deal with this, trying to be safe at night while I sleep, has been the most challenging part of this. I thank God I'm a person of resources, and I have that to reach out to, because I did. I stayed safe at night, and I tried to get a grip and get spiritually grounded, just to come out and have to deal with the targeting, which included gang stalking, 24/7 harassment, monitoring. I started experiencing symptoms of voice to skull, and in which it was up until last August that I realized that I started experiencing symptoms of being or having voice to skull. In fact, as I shared some of these symptoms on Facebook, people told me that they believed I was suffering the symptoms of. It's, that right there is the most disgusting part of this. Nothing I do is private. Absolutely nothing. But I no longer have anything to hide. I'm currently in a facility where I'm safe, and I'm there for my safety. I will do whatever it takes to remain abstinent from drugs and alcohol, and to continue to reach out and help others who are experiencing the same symptoms of being targeted. I attempted to start a support group last year for people targeted here in Minnesota. With my attempts to get that going, the pressure, I felt more pressure. Today I'm doing really well due to my relationship with God and how I turn over my life completely to Him. And today get to experience being happy, joyous, and free. And it's genuine joy that I experience. I'm grateful that I heard about Bill coming here to Minnesota. I've been wanting to share my story, and I'm continuing to stand firm and speaking my truth about what I've experienced, and I hope this helps. Thank you.
All right, let me ask you, did you happen to bring any of the tape recordings?
I have videos and some of the recordings with me.
Will you be able to send me MP3s or something of those?
I can attempt to do that, yes.
Because most people who are targeted individuals don't have any proof.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've got real, live, honest-to-goodness proof.
I do, and I do have to say that, some of the copies, because I knew enough to make copies, because everything I have has been manipulated. And so I have numerous copies out there with friends. I was the only one supposed to be there at night. There should be no recordings.
Right.
And it's clear that, in the audios that I was drugged every time, that I was taken out of my apartment. Thank God for evidence.
All right, what's the reaction of people when you tell them that you're a targeted individual? I'm sure they don't even know what that means at first.
Right, there are many, many people that aren't aware. However, there are people, some of my peers, that are aware. They listened with, empathy and compassion, and they've also shared knowledge of other individuals that they know, they're aware of, that have been targeted. The professionals that I tell, some are aware of this, most of them aren't. I've been accused of, having this be in my head due to traumatic brain injuries that I suffered due to that overdose, and also my drug use. And who's going to believe an addict? They definitely played on that, my being an addict. I've come to realize that, not everybody's going to believe me, and it's, this is their own journey, and, I'm not here to try to convince anybody. I do have proof. I have lots of proof beyond the videos and the recordings, so I just know one day that everybody's going to know the truth. So
that's a wrap.